At exactly 11:30 at night, the penthouse elevator opened, and Chloe Mercer marched into what sounded like the final minutes of a supernatural war. A roar shook the top floor of Crescent Heights luxury apartments. The crystal light fixtures trembled. A decorative vase rattled against its marble pedestal. Somewhere behind one of the penthouse doors, glass shattered, followed by a deep, savage snarl that rolled through the corridor with enough force to make the elevator doors hesitate before closing behind her. Chloe did not flinch. She was 24 years old, stunningly beautiful, and currently more irritated than afraid. Her pale blue eyes were narrowed. Her blonde hair had been twisted into a neat knot hours ago, though several loose strands now framed her sharp cheekbones. Her fitted black slacks, white blouse, and practical heels remained immaculate, despite the fact that she had already dealt with a flooded laundry room, a broken parking gate, and 2 residents arguing over an unauthorized emotional support peacock. The roaring was worse. She adjusted the walkie-talkie clipped to her belt, tucked her master keycard more securely into her pocket, and checked the yellow violation form attached to her clipboard. Unit PH 1. Tenant name, Silas Vale. Reported offense, excessive noise during designated quiet hours. Number of complaints, 11. Chloe lifted her chin and walked down the corridor. Another impact struck the wall from inside the penthouse. The framed abstract painting beside the door jumped sideways. Chloe stopped, straightened it, then knocked 3 times. Sharp. Even. Authoritative. The roaring ceased. Silence rushed across the hallway. It was not peaceful silence. It was the dense, unnatural stillness that came before something violent decided where to strike. Chloe raised her hand to knock again. The penthouse door was yanked open so violently that air exploded into the corridor. Silas Vale filled the doorway. He was enormous. At 30 years old, he stood well over 6 feet 6, with shoulders broad enough to block the interior lights behind him. His expensive black dress shirt had been torn open at the collar, revealing a heavily muscled chest marked by several fresh scratches. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, exposing powerful forearms and hands large enough to crush bone. His face would have been devastatingly handsome if it had not been twisted with lethal fury. Black hair fell over his forehead. His strong jaw was clenched. His eyes glowed a burning, unnatural gold. Long white fangs extended over his lower lip, and bloodlust poured from him in invisible waves. He had opened the door expecting an assassin. Instead, he found a property manager holding a clipboard. Silas stared down at her. Chloe stared back. His nostrils flared. Her expression remained completely flat. Behind Silas, 3 massive men in dark suits stood frozen around an overturned glass table. One had blood running from his nose. Another held a broken chair leg. A third was halfway through shifting, with claws extending from his fingers and gray fur spreading across his neck. Chloe glanced past Silas. Then she looked at the damaged table. Then at the wall, where a man-shaped dent had appeared in the expensive plaster. Her mouth tightened. Silas's voice emerged as a low, brutal growl. "Who are you?" Chloe peeled the yellow citation from her clipboard and slapped it against the center of his massive chest. The sound cracked through the corridor. Every man inside the penthouse stopped breathing. Silas looked down. The yellow paper clung briefly to his shirt before sliding toward the floor. He caught it between 2 fingers without taking his glowing eyes off Chloe. "Quiet hours began at 10, she said calmly. "You are in violation of Section 8, Paragraph 3 of the Crescent Heights Resident Conduct Agreement." Silas did not move. His men stared at Chloe as though she had just walked up to a loaded cannon and criticized its volume. Chloe tapped the citation with the end of her pen. "You have received 11 complaints in the last hour." A vein pulsed in Silas's temple. "You came here," he said slowly, "to give me a noise ticket?" Yes. Do you know who I am? Silas Vale, Penthouse 1. Your lease began 6 weeks ago. You still have not submitted the required vehicle registration forms for the 3 black cars occupying reserved spaces in the lower garage. One of the men behind him quietly lowered the broken chair leg. Silas's lips parted. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, the alpha king of the most feared syndicate in Lumina City had no immediate response. Then Chloe's scent reached him. It slipped through the blood, rage, shattered glass, and adrenaline. Warm vanilla, clean linen, rain-striking, sun-heated stone. Silas went rigid. His wolf, already raging beneath his skin, stopped. One enormous heartbeat passed. Then the beast inside him went completely feral. Mate. The word tore through his mind with primal certainty. His mate stood in front of him. His human mate. His fearless, delicate, maddeningly beautiful mate had slapped a noise violation against his chest and was now studying him as if he were a malfunctioning appliance. Possessive hunger detonated through Silas. His claws pressed against the inside of his fingertips. Every muscle tightened. His pupils expanded until the gold nearly swallowed his eyes. The urge to pull her into the penthouse, lock every door, surround her with his scent, and kill anything that came within 10 feet of her, crashed over him with staggering force. Chloe frowned. Are you having a medical emergency? Silas inhaled again. A mistake. Her scent filled his lungs. His wolf slammed against his control so violently that the doorframe cracked beneath his gripping hand. Chloe looked at the splintering wood. That will come out of your damage deposit. Silas's men exchanged alarmed glances. Their alpha had executed traitors without blinking. He had torn through rival enforcers with his bare hands. He had taken control of the Vale Syndicate before his 25th birthday and ruled it through a combination of terrifying intelligence and overwhelming physical dominance. No one spoke to him this way. No one survived speaking to him this way. Yet, Silas was not thinking about murder. He was thinking about the tiny pulse beating in Chloe's throat. He was thinking about how perfectly her body would fit against his. He was thinking about carrying her into his bedroom and never allowing her to leave. His gaze dragged over her face, her slender neck, the professional white blouse tucked into her fitted trousers. Desire darkened his already dangerous expression. Chloe noticed. Her eyes narrowed further. If you are attempting to make me uncomfortable, Mr. Vale, I should inform you that harassment of building employees is grounds for additional penalties. A stunned sound escaped one of the men inside. It might have been a cough. It might have been a laugh strangled by fear. Silas turned his head slightly. The room behind him went silent again. He returned his attention to Chloe. You should be afraid of me, he said. The command in his voice was not entirely human. Power flooded the corridor. The air thickened. The lights dimmed. A crushing alpha aura rolled outward, ancient and merciless, designed to force weaker creatures into submission. Inside the penthouse, Silas's own men lowered their heads. The partially shifted wolf dropped to one knee, shaking under the pressure. Silas focused all of it on Chloe. Her heartbeat accelerated once. He heard it. His wolf surged with satisfaction. Then she pulled another form from beneath her clipboard. Threatening behavior toward Crescent Heights personnel carries a $500 fine. Silas blinked. Chloe began writing. His aura faltered. What are you doing? I am documenting the threat. I did not threaten you. You used an aggressive tone, displayed visible fangs, damaged common area property, and attempted some kind of intimidation tactic. Some kind of intimidation tactic? She checked a box. Hostile posturing. Silas stared at her with open disbelief. No human had ever stood under the full force of his alpha presence without trembling, running, or collapsing. Chloe had responded by increasing his fine. You are either very brave, he murmured, or completely insane. I manage 180 luxury units. Those qualities are not mutually exclusive. His mouth almost moved. Silas Vale did not smile. Smiling encouraged familiarity, and familiarity encouraged people to forget their place. But something dangerous and unfamiliar tugged at the corner of his lips. Chloe saw it and misunderstood completely. "This is not amusing." "No," Silas said. "It is not." His voice had deepened. The sound brushed over her skin like dark velvet. Chloe felt a strange shiver move down her spine, but her expression did not change. She had learned early that difficult tenants could smell uncertainty. Silas leaned closer. His immense body blocked the doorway. Heat radiated from him. His gold eyes searched hers with an intensity that would have frightened anyone with normal survival instincts. Chloe possessed survival instincts. She simply refused to let them interfere with policy enforcement. "You came up here alone," Silas said. "Yes." "At 11:30 at night?" "Yes." "After hearing me roar." "The concierge refused to come." "A wise man. He will be receiving a performance warning tomorrow." Silas's wolf practically purred. She was impossible. She was magnificent. She was his. The certainty of that final thought hardened his expression. "What is your name?" "It is printed at the bottom of the citation." "I want to hear you say it." Chloe held his gaze. "Chloe Mercer, property manager." "Chloe." The way he spoke her name sounded less like an introduction and more like a claim. She tapped her pen against the clipboard. "Mr. Vale, you need to keep your activities below 50 decibels until 7 in the morning." His gaze remained fixed on her mouth. "What activities do you imagine I am conducting?" Chloe glanced past him at the bleeding men, shattered furniture, and claw marks carved into a marble support column. "I stopped imagining what tenants do inside their units during my first month on the job." The man with the bloody nose looked down to hide a grin. Silas noticed. The man's grin vanished. Chloe continued. "However, fighting, ritual combat, indoor demolition, and keeping unauthorized large animals are all prohibited. There are no animals here." A deep growl rolled from the half-shifted man. Chloe looked directly at him. "Then someone should consult a physician." Silas's chest expanded with a sharp breath. This time, there was no mistaking the faint curve of his mouth. It transformed his face. He remained terrifying, but the flash of amusement made his brutal beauty almost unfair. Chloe refused to acknowledge the effect. "Sign here." She held out the clipboard. Silas looked at it, then at her. "You want my signature? It confirms receipt. I do not sign anything without my attorney. It is a noise citation, not a merger agreement." His eyebrows lifted. Behind him, one of his men made a choking sound. Chloe extended the clipboard another inch. Silas had forced politicians, judges, gang leaders, and corporate executives to accept his terms. He had made powerful men sign contracts while kneeling on concrete floors. Now a human woman half his size was ordering him to acknowledge a quiet hours violation. His wolf wanted to obey her. The discovery was deeply disturbing. Silas took the pen. His fingers brushed hers. The instant their skin touched, a pulse of heat shot up Chloe's arm. Her breath caught. Silas froze. The contact lasted less than a second, but his beast roared inside him with such force that his vision flashed gold. He smelled the sudden change in her scent, the spark of awareness she tried to conceal. She felt it too. Good. Silas signed his name with one violent stroke. The pen cracked in his grip. Blue ink sprayed across the citation. Chloe looked at the broken plastic. "Destruction of building office supplies will be added to your account." It was a cheap pen. It was property. He handed back the two pieces. Their fingers did not touch this time. Chloe inspected the ruined form, then tore off the resident copy and pressed it into his palm. "The initial fine is $200. The staff intimidation penalty is $500. Damage to the hallway frame will be assessed after maintenance provides an estimate." Silas looked at the yellow slip in his hand as if it were evidence of witchcraft. "And if I refuse to pay?" "Late fees begin after 30 days. And after that?" "Continued non-payment may lead to legal action." His smile appeared slowly. You intend to take legal action against me? I intend to follow the lease. You truly do not know what I am. Chloe clipped the pen fragments beneath the metal clasp of her clipboard. I know exactly what you are, Mr. Vale. Silas's expression sharpened. His men became motionless. Chloe looked up at the towering, fang-bearing Alpha King, her face cold and perfectly serious. You are a tenant. Silence followed. Then the elevator chimed behind her. Chloe turned away. Silas's body reacted before his mind did. His hand shot out and struck the wall beside her head, blocking her path without touching her. The corridor lights flickered again. Chloe slowly looked at his arm, then at his face. Move. Every predator instinct in Silas demanded that he refuse. His mate was walking away. His mate did not understand the bond. His mate believed she could return to some ordinary office while danger moved through the city and rival syndicates plotted against him. He wanted guards around her. He wanted her scent in his home. He wanted her sleeping beneath his protection before sunrise. But Chloe's expression promised paperwork of catastrophic proportions. Silas lowered his arm. She stepped past him. Good night, Mr. Vale. Chloe. She paused at the elevator but did not turn. This is not finished. She pressed the call button. That sounds like a threat. It is a promise. Chloe glanced over her shoulder. Silas stood in the ruined doorway, towering and beautiful, his fangs still visible and his golden eyes burning with possessive intent. His men watched him with the horrified fascination of people witnessing a natural disaster develop romantic feelings. Chloe held up her clipboard. Promises made in an intimidating manner may also qualify for the $500 penalty. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. Silas moved forward, but the doors slid shut between them. For several seconds, he stared at his own reflection in the polished metal. Then he looked down at the yellow citation in his hand. The penthouse remained silent behind him. No one dared speak. Silas finally turned. His men straightened at once. The partially shifted wolf forced his claws to retract. Alpha, should we remove her? Silas's head snapped toward him. The room temperature seemed to plummet. The man went pale. Touch her, Silas said softly, and I will remove your hands. The wolf swallowed. Understood. Silas looked again at the elevator. His inner beast paced beneath his skin, restless and possessive, repeating one word with every thunderous beat of his heart. Mate! She was human. She was fearless. She had fined him $700 in under 5 minutes. Silas slowly folded the citation and slipped it into the inside pocket of his shirt, directly over his heart. Then he faced the damaged penthouse. Clean this up. His men moved instantly. And find out everything about Chloe Mercer. The man with the bloody nose hesitated. Everything? Silas's eyes glowed brighter. Everything. Far below, Chloe stepped out of the elevator and entered the quiet lobby. She walked behind the reception desk, opened the violation log, and recorded the incident in neat handwriting. Unit PH-1. Excessive noise. Aggressive conduct. Property damage. Citation delivered successfully. She paused. For reasons she did not care to examine, her fingers still tingled where they had touched his. Chloe flexed her hand once, closed the log, and looked up toward the ceiling. A distant roar rolled through the building. She immediately reached for another citation form. The second roar had barely faded when Chloe pulled a fresh yellow citation from the stack. The night concierge watched her write with the expression of a man witnessing someone prepare to slap a hurricane. You are not going back up there, are you? He whispered. Chloe checked the time. Quiet hours are still in effect. He threatened to tear the elevator doors off. He did not actually tear them off. That is your standard for safety? My standard is the lease agreement. She finished the citation, clipped it beneath the first, and headed toward the elevators. The concierge stared after her. Should I call security? You are security. He looked down at his burgundy blazer as though it had betrayed him. By the time Chloe reached the penthouse again, the hallway had become perfectly silent. The damaged painting had been straightened. The splintered doorframe remained broken, but someone had swept the wood fragments into a neat pile. She knocked. Silas opened the door immediately. He had rebuttoned his shirt, washed the blood from his hands, and dismissed the men who had been fighting in his living room. He now looked less like a beast interrupted during a kill, and more like a ruthless executive waiting for a private appointment. His golden eyes dropped to the new citation. "You came back. You roared again. I was expressing frustration. You exceeded 50 decibels while doing so." Silas leaned one shoulder against the frame. "How much?" "Another $200. Worth it." Chloe narrowed her eyes. He took the citation without protest. That was when the first idea entered his mind. It was a terrible idea. Silas had built an empire through disciplined violence, strategic alliances, and the calculated destruction of anyone foolish enough to challenge him. He possessed controlling interests in half the city's private security firms, several luxury developments, and enough offshore assets to make governments nervous. Yet none of that had made Chloe Mercer look at him the way she looked at a violation form. Rules commanded her attention. Therefore, Silas would break rules. By 7 the next morning, his custom black sports car occupied 2 premium spaces in the Crescent Heights garage. It was not an accidental violation. The vehicle sat diagonally across the white dividing line with insulting precision, its polished body gleaming beneath the fluorescent lights like an expensive predator stretched across forbidden territory. Chloe discovered it at 7:12. Her mouth flattened. The garage attendant stood several feet away, pretending to study a fire extinguisher. "Who parked this?" Chloe asked. The attendant swallowed. "Mr. Vale's driver. Did you ask him to move it?" "Yes." "And?" "He asked whether I preferred my legs attached." Chloe wrote that down. At 7:25, Silas stepped out of his private elevator, wearing a charcoal suit tailored across his massive shoulders. 2 armed men followed him. He walked toward the car with the cold authority of a king approaching a throne. Chloe stood in front of it. He almost smiled. "Good morning," he said. "You are occupying 2 spaces." So observant. "Your lease includes 1 reserved space. I own 6 cars." "Then rotate them." One of his men turned his face away. Silas stopped close enough that Chloe had to tilt her head back. "Perhaps I will purchase the space beside mine. It belongs to Unit 42. I will purchase Unit 42. The resident is not selling. Everyone sells." Chloe pressed a red parking violation against his lapel. "Not me." The words struck harder than they should have. Silas looked down at her delicate hand resting briefly against his chest. Heat moved through him. His wolf surged forward, delighted by her nearness and enraged by every inch separating them. Chloe withdrew. "The fine is $300. Move the vehicle within 15 minutes, or it will be towed." Silas looked at the car, then at her. "You would tow a vehicle worth more than this building's annual maintenance budget? I would tow a bicycle if it were parked incorrectly. Do you ever bend? Not for tenants." His gaze lowered slowly. Chloe's expression sharpened. "Finish that thought carefully." A dangerous smile touched his mouth. "I was referring to rules." "No, you were not." His men developed a sudden interest in the concrete floor. Silas leaned closer, his deep voice dropping to a private rumble. "You understand me very well for a woman who claims not to care. I understand predictable men." Nothing in Silas's violent life had prepared him for being called predictable. His smile disappeared. Chloe pointed toward the driver's seat. 14 minutes. He moved the car in 6. The next violation occurred 2 days later. At precisely 9 in the morning, the camera outside the penthouse elevator stopped transmitting. Maintenance replaced it. At 9:43, it stopped again. The footage showed one of Silas's enforcers walking beneath it while carrying a long wooden ladder. The ladder swung upward and struck the camera with such force that it broke from its mount. The man looked directly into the damaged lens before it went dark. Chloe arrived at the penthouse with a replacement invoice and a suspicion that was rapidly becoming certainty. Silas opened the door wearing a black vest over a white shirt, his sleeves rolled to reveal powerful forearms. He had clearly been expecting her. "Miss Mercer." "Mr. Vale." His gaze moved over her fitted navy suit, the clipboard pressed beneath her arm, and the faint color on her cheeks from walking quickly. "What brings you to my door?" "Your employee destroyed another camera." Silas glanced over his shoulder. "Dante, did you destroy a camera?" The enormous man, standing near the windows, adopted an expression of theatrical confusion. "Accidentally, Alpha." Chloe looked at the broken wooden ladder propped against the wall. It had been cut cleanly in half. Why was he carrying a ladder on the top floor? Silas considered the question. "He enjoys ladders." Dante nodded solemnly. Chloe wrote something on her form. "What are you writing?" Silas asked. "Intentional destruction of security equipment. It was an accident. Your employee made direct eye contact with the camera before striking it. He has excellent situational awareness. He smiled. He is cheerful." Dante, who had once dislocated a man's shoulder for using Silas's parking space, attempted a cheerful smile. It looked like a threat issued by a shark. Chloe tore off the citation. $1,000 for the camera, $200 for labor, $500 for compromising building security. Silas accepted it eagerly. Her eyes narrowed. "You seem pleased. I enjoy our conversations. You keep paying fines to have them. I have paid more for less satisfying company." Chloe ignored the implication. "The next incident may result in access restrictions for your staff." Silas stepped closer. "Then you would have to come upstairs more often." There it was. The pattern became obvious. The roaring, the parking, the cameras. Each violation was clumsy by his standards and perfectly designed to draw her to the penthouse. Chloe lowered the clipboard. "Are you deliberately violating building policies to get my attention?" Silas's men froze. Silas regarded her without embarrassment. "Would it work?" "No. You are standing at my door." "For enforcement purposes." "You are still standing at my door." Chloe moved backward. Silas's jaw tightened instantly. His wolf hated the increased distance. "Do not break another camera," she said. "What should I break instead?" "Nothing. That removes the incentive. The incentive is avoiding fines. I do not care about money." I had gathered that. Silas watched her enter the elevator. The doors closed, carrying her away. The hallway became unbearably empty. He turned slowly toward Dante. "Break something involving plumbing." Dante hesitated. "Something expensive? Something that requires management." The staged leak began at 8:15 the following evening. Water seeped beneath the penthouse door and spread across the marble hallway in a suspiciously controlled stream. Silas had ordered a valve loosened beneath the wet bar and dismissed his entire household staff before calling the emergency maintenance line. Chloe answered. When she arrived 12 minutes later, she carried a metal toolbox and wore black trousers, low boots, and a pale gray blouse with the sleeves rolled to her elbows. She saw the water. She saw the strategically placed towels. Then she saw Silas. He opened the door, completely shirtless. Chloe stopped. Silas filled the entrance with bare muscle and calculated temptation. His chest was broad and sculpted, his abdomen hard beneath smooth skin marked by pale scars. Dark trousers rested low on his hips. Water gleamed across one shoulder as though he had deliberately sprayed himself before opening the door. He had. His hair was damp. His gold eyes burned with satisfaction when Chloe's gaze paused for one fraction of a second too long. "Emergency?" she asked. "My pipes are out of control." Her eyes lifted to his face. Silas allowed the silence to hold. Then Chloe stepped past him. "Show me the valve." His expression flickered. He closed the door and followed her through the penthouse. "You seem tense." "I am walking through water while carrying tools." Your heart is beating faster. I climbed stairs because the private elevator was locked. Silas had locked it. He watched the movement of her hips as she crossed the living room. You noticed I was not wearing a shirt. I noticed lease violations. My chest violates the lease. Public indecency in common areas might. We are inside my home. Then put on protective footwear. Broken glass remains near the bar. Silas looked down. A fragment lay inches from his bare foot. She had noticed the danger before he had. The observation sent an unexpected warmth through him. Chloe knelt beside the wet bar and opened the cabinet. Water sprayed from a loosened connection, spreading across the tile. She examined it for 3 seconds before looking over her shoulder. The compression nut is loose. A tragedy. It was loosened intentionally. An accusation. The threads are undamaged, and there is a wrench on the counter. Silas followed her gaze. The wrench his men had used remained beside a bottle of liquor. Dante was losing ladder privileges. Chloe reached into her toolbox, selected a cold steel wrench, stood, and shoved it into Silas's hand. He looked down at it. What is this? A wrench. I know what a wrench is. Then tighten the valve. Silas stared at her. Chloe pointed beneath the sink. You created the problem. Fix it. I have people for that. You sent them away. His eyes narrowed. How do you know? The penthouse is silent. No one answered the service entrance, and the security desk reported that 6 of your men left 10 minutes before you called. Silas's mouth curved. You monitor my movements. I monitor the building. Say it however you need to. Chloe folded her arms. The motion drew the fabric of her blouse across her chest. Silas's attention dropped. She snapped her fingers once. His gaze returned to her face. The valve. No one snapped their fingers at Silas. No one ordered him beneath sinks. Yet, seconds later, the Alpha King of Lumina City lowered himself to one knee in a puddle and reached into the cabinet. He turned the wrench. The spray stopped. Chloe crouched beside him to inspect the connection. Their shoulders touched. Silas went still. She was close enough for her scent to wrap around him. A loose strand of blonde hair brushed his arm. Her knee pressed lightly against his thigh as she leaned forward. His fingers tightened around the wrench. Another quarter turn, she said. His voice came out rough. You should move. Why? Because I am trying to behave. Chloe looked at him. Their faces were inches apart. His expression had changed. The amusement was gone. Hunger burned through his golden eyes, raw and intense, held in check by visible effort. His chest rose slowly. A muscle jumped along his jaw. His fangs pressed against his lower lip. For the first time, Chloe's composure wavered. Only slightly. Her pupils widened. Her breath caught. Heat flared between them, immediate and dangerous, turning the ordinary cabinet into a space too small for both of them. Silas could hear her heartbeat. He could smell her awareness. His wolf demanded that he close the final distance. Instead, he turned the wrench. A sharp metallic creak broke the moment. Chloe moved back and stood. That is tight enough. Silas remained on one knee, looking up at her. The position should have diminished him. It did not. Even kneeling, he radiated lethal authority, his bare torso shining beneath the lights, his eyes fixed on her with possessive intensity. Chloe took the wrench from his hand. Maintenance will inspect the connection tomorrow. I can arrange another leak. I can arrange another fine. He rose to his full height. She had to step back to avoid colliding with his chest. Silas followed. Chloe's lower back met the edge of the wet bar. He placed one hand beside her, trapping her without touching. His body surrounded hers with heat and strength. You know what I want, he murmured. A revised plumbing inspection. You. The single word stripped the humor from the room. Chloe's fingers tightened around the wrench. Silas lowered his head. Every time you leave, this place feels wrong. You barely know me. I know you are fearless. I know you value order more than money. I know you refuse to flatter me, fear me, or pretend I am something civilized when I am not. His voice became quieter. I know no one has spoken to me like a normal man in years. Chloe searched his face. Beneath the dangerous beauty, and predatory confidence, she saw something unexpected. Not weakness. Loneliness. Silas had spent his life surrounded by people who obeyed before he finished speaking. They lowered their eyes, concealed their opinions, and measured every breath around him. Even his allies treated him like a weapon that might turn in their hands. Chloe treated him like a tenant with faulty plumbing. He was becoming addicted to it, to her annoyance, her rules, the sharp sound of her heels in his hallway, the way she looked directly into his eyes without seeing a monster or a king, just Silas. The realization frightened him more than any enemy ever had. Chloe lifted the wrench between them. You still caused intentional property damage. His mouth twitched. The valve is my property. The water damaged the flooring. I will replace it. You will pay for building-approved contractors to replace it. Of course. And you will stop creating emergencies to lure me upstairs. Silas leaned closer. Will you come without an emergency? No. Then I reject that condition. Chloe pushed the cold wrench against the center of his bare chest. He stepped back, more from surprise than force. She walked toward the door. Silas followed. Dinner. No. One drink. No. A lease consultation. She paused. His eyes brightened. During office hours, Chloe said, with the door open. Silas smiled fully. It was slow, devastating, and far too pleased. When? You are not getting an appointment. You just offered one. I described a hypothetical. I will be there at 9. Mr. Vale. 9 sharp. Chloe opened the door. Silas stood behind her, shirtless, barefoot, and radiating triumph, despite being surrounded by wet towels and holding a plumbing citation. She looked back at him. If another camera breaks tonight, I will personally deactivate every penthouse access card. His smile deepened. Then you would have to bring me new ones. Chloe stepped into the hall. The door closed between them. Silas remained there, listening to her footsteps recede. For once, he did not order anyone to follow her. He did not need a report on where she was going or whom she would see. He simply stood in the quiet penthouse, feeling the memory of her shoulder against his and the cold pressure of the wrench on his chest. Then his gaze dropped to the waterlogged floor. He pulled out his phone. Dante answered immediately. Alpha? No more cameras. A relieved pause followed. Understood. Silas looked toward the door. Find out which building rule carries the longest in-person consultation. Dante was silent. Alpha, with respect, kidnapping would be easier. Silas' expression turned cold. I am not kidnapping my mate. Of course not. I am irritating her professionally. Yes, Alpha. Silas ended the call. Downstairs, Chloe entered her office and placed the wet wrench on her desk. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was not. She opened the incident log and began to write. Unit PH 1. Deliberate plumbing interference. Tenant corrected valve under supervision. Her pen hovered. Then she added one final note. Further violations expected. At that exact moment, the fire alarm above her desk gave one sharp, suspicious chirp. Chloe slowly looked up. Far above, in the penthouse, Silas smiled. The fire alarm above Chloe's desk chirped a second time. Then every light in Crescent Heights went out. The office vanished into darkness. The computer monitors died. The ventilation system slowed to a mechanical groan before falling silent. Beyond the glass walls of the management office, the lobby's chandeliers flickered once and disappeared, leaving only the gray pulse of lightning through the storm-black windows. Rain struck the building in violent sheets. Thunder rolled across Lumina City hard enough to shake the glass. Chloe remained seated for exactly 2 seconds. Then she opened the bottom drawer of her desk and removed a flashlight, an emergency radio, and a thick plastic folder containing the building's master blueprints. The night concierge stumbled from behind the reception counter. Power failure, he said breathlessly. Yes. The backup generator should have started. Yes. It did not. I noticed. A burst of static cracked from the radio. Then a man screamed. The sound ended with a wet impact. Chloe's expression changed, not into fear, into focus. She stood and clipped the radio to her belt, locked the lobby doors. They are electronic. Use the manual bolts. What was that scream? Do not leave this floor. The concierge stared at her. Where are you going? Upstairs. Another flash of lightning illuminated her face as she crossed the lobby. The elevator controls were dead, so Chloe pushed through the stairwell door and began climbing. 23 floors above her, Silas stood in the center of his penthouse while darkness gathered around him like a living thing. His head tilted. He heard boots on concrete. Not one set. Dozens. They moved through the service stairwells, the garage access corridors, and the maintenance levels with disciplined speed. Their heartbeats were too slow for humans. Their scents rose through the ventilation shafts beneath the odors of rain, oil, and wet concrete. Rogues. Silas's eyes ignited gold. Dante emerged from the shadows with blood on his sleeve and a pistol in his hand. They killed the generator technician, he said. North stairwell cameras went down before the power cut. At least 20. Pack? Ravik's remnants. Silas's jaw hardened. 6 months earlier, he had destroyed the Ravik syndicate after its alpha attempted to traffic wolves through Vale territory. The survivors had scattered. Apparently, enough had regrouped to become suicidal. Seal the penthouse, Silas ordered. Kill anyone who reaches this floor. A sharp knock struck the door. Every weapon in the room aimed toward it. Silas smelled vanilla, clean linen, and rain. His rage transformed instantly. He crossed the penthouse in 3 strides and tore the door open. Chloe stood in the dark hallway holding a flashlight and a blueprint folder. Her hair was damp from a leak in the stairwell ceiling. Her blouse sleeves were rolled up. Her blue eyes were calm and severely annoyed. The emergency generator has been sabotaged, she said. Someone disabled the fire control relay and cut the building's external communication line. Silas grabbed her arm and pulled her inside. She barely avoided dropping the blueprints. Excuse me. Dante, safe room. Dante moved toward her. Chloe stepped back. No. Silas locked the penthouse door and turned on her. There are assassins inside the building. I know. They are werewolves. I assumed the men climbing the East Service stairs on all 4s were not residents returning from dinner. Silas's fangs extended. You saw them? On the 17th floor. And you continued upward? The emergency operations panel is in your utility corridor. Silas seized her by the shoulders. His hands nearly encircled them. You are going into the safe room. Chloe looked at his left hand. His claws were beginning to emerge. You are damaging my blouse. Chloe. No. The single word stopped him. Behind them, Silas's men exchanged tense glances as thunder shook the windows. Silas lowered his face until his glowing eyes were level with hers. This is not a noise violation. These wolves came here to slaughter everyone connected to me. They will tear through walls to reach this floor. Then putting me in a room with 1 exit would be strategically unsound. The walls are reinforced. The ventilation shaft is not. Dante looked sharply toward the hall leading to the safe room. Chloe opened the plastic folder and unfolded a detailed blueprint across the nearest table. The penthouse safe room shares a vertical return air shaft with the executive laundry room on floor 22. The grill is decorative aluminum. Any adult with a screwdriver can remove it. Silas stared down at the plans. Dante cursed. Chloe pointed at the page. Also, if the attackers know enough to sabotage the generator, they may know enough to trigger the fire doors. If that happens while I am locked inside, the safe room becomes a steel box without ventilation. Silas's hands remained on her shoulders. His grip loosened. How do you know where they are? He asked. The motion sensors have independent batteries. The security monitors are dead. The monitors are dead. The sensor control board is not. She stepped away from him and entered the utility corridor. Silas followed immediately. Chloe opened a narrow cabinet beside the penthouse service entrance, removed a metal access plate, and exposed a grid of tiny red lights. Several were blinking in sequence. "Movement in the north stairwell," she said. "Floor 19, floor 20, floor 21. Dante raised his pistol 3 floors below us. "5 attackers," Chloe said. "Possibly 6. The sensor at the landing does not cover the inner corner." Silas studied her profile. She was reading the building like a battlefield. Another cluster of lights flashed near the lower levels. Chloe's eyes narrowed. "There is a second group entering through the loading dock." "How many?" Silas asked. "Too many for the lobby staff." His wolf surged. Bone cracked beneath his skin. His shoulders expanded. Dark fur began pushing along his arms as he prepared to shift. Chloe glanced at him. "Do not." Silas turned his head slowly. "What did you say?" "Do not shift. They are coming, and a 9-foot wolf cannot fit through the maintenance passages I intend to use." Silas's face tightened as his transformation paused halfway. "I do not require maintenance passages." "You do if you want to get behind them without being seen." A heavy crash sounded from the stairwell. One of Silas's guards shouted. Gunfire exploded beyond the penthouse door. Silas moved in front of Chloe as bullets tore through the wood. His body widened, shielding her completely. Dante and the others returned fire through the walls. A roar answered from the hallway. The door bent inward. Chloe crouched beside the utility panel. "What are you doing?" Silas demanded. "Taking control of the fire doors. You need power." The magnetic locks fail closed on battery backup. She removed a compact key from her belt, inserted it into the emergency panel, and turned. A row of green indicators appeared. The corridor outside erupted with snarls. The penthouse door burst from its hinges. 2 enormous wolves charged through the opening. Silas intercepted the first. His fist struck its jaw with a crack that spun the beast sideways. He caught the second by the throat and drove it into the marble wall hard enough to fracture the stone. More shapes filled the hallway. "Now," Chloe said. She pressed a switch. A steel fire door dropped from the ceiling between the first 2 attackers and the rest of their pack. It slammed down with brutal force. One rogue barely pulled his arm back before the metal crushed it. The wolves trapped inside the penthouse turned toward Chloe. Silas's face transformed. His eyes became molten gold. His fangs lengthened. The muscles along his back swelled beneath his shirt. The first rogue lunged. Silas tore him from the floor and hurled him through the broken remains of the dining table. Dante fired twice into the second wolf's leg. The beast collapsed. Silas reached it before it could rise. His claws flashed. The rogue went still. Silence returned except for rain and the pounding of bodies against the sealed fire door. Chloe looked at the ruined wall. "That is structural stone veneer." Silas turned toward her, blood on his hands. "Send me the invoice." The fire door shook under another impact. Chloe folded the blueprint. "We cannot hold this floor." Silas looked almost offended. "I can hold this floor." They entered through 3 access points. Their lower group is moving toward the electrical room. If they destroy the emergency battery bank, I lose control of the doors. Then we kill them before they reach it. They expect you to defend the penthouse. They are correct. That is why we are leaving. Silas stared at her. Chloe opened a narrow utility door. Behind it was a dark service shaft containing pipes, cables, and a vertical maintenance ladder. "This runs to the mechanical level." Dante looked into the opening. "That is not on the public floor plan." "No," Chloe said. "It is on mine." The fire door buckled. Silas grabbed Chloe around the waist and lifted her toward the ladder. "I can climb," she said. "You can complain while I carry you." "I am not complaining. You always complain." "I document." He lowered her onto the ladder. Chloe descended rapidly, the flashlight clenched between her teeth. Silas followed so closely that his chest nearly touched her back. Dante and 4 men entered behind him before the fire door above finally tore free. A wolf's head appeared in the opening. Silas kicked the hatch shut, the shaft filled with snarls and pounding. Chloe reached the mechanical level and stepped onto a steel platform. The darkness below smelled of oil, damp concrete, and hot machinery. This way. She led them through a passage barely wide enough for Silas's shoulders. The Alpha King moved silently despite his size. His body remained between Chloe and every possible threat. Each time they crossed an opening, he touched her waist and guided her behind him. She noticed. She did not comment. Her radio hissed. "Miss Mercer," the concierge whispered. "Something is in the lobby." Chloe lifted the radio. "Are the manual bolts engaged?" "Yes." "Stay behind the stone desk. Do not move." A crash sounded through the speaker. The transmission ended. Silas's expression turned murderous. Chloe unfolded another section of the blueprint against the wall. The loading dock group will use the freight corridor to reach the central stairs. "How do we stop them?" Dante asked. "We do not stop them there." Her finger moved downward. "We pull them into the sub-basement." Silas studied the page. "What is in the sub-basement?" "The industrial waste system." Dante's eyes widened. Chloe looked up. "The compactor." They descended another service ladder and entered a concrete corridor beneath the garage. Pipes ran overhead. Water dripped steadily from the storm drains. A howl echoed behind them. The assassins had entered the mechanical level. "They have our scent," Silas said. "I know. They will follow. That is the idea." Chloe reached a junction box and opened it. She pulled 2 wires free. The corridor lights 20 yards ahead flashed on. Every other light remained dark, creating a narrow, illuminated path toward a red metal door. Silas watched her work. "You are making a trail. I am showing them where we want them to go." "And if they notice?" "They are supernatural killers invading a residential building during a thunderstorm. I am relying on confidence." Silas's mouth curved. The first rogue appeared at the far end of the corridor, then another, then 6 more. Their eyes glowed in the dark. Chloe stepped behind Silas. His body expanded as his wolf pushed toward the surface. "Run," he told her. She pressed a button on the wall. A security barrier dropped behind the rogues, blocking their retreat. The assassins charged. Silas and his men moved backward through the red door, firing in controlled bursts. Bullets struck concrete and flesh. The rogues kept coming, shifting as they ran, bones snapping and bodies enlarging into monstrous wolves. Chloe remained at the control station beside the compactor chamber. "Closer," she said. Silas threw one attacker over a railing. Another slashed his shoulder. Blood spread across his shirt. Chloe's eyes flashed, but her voice remained steady. "Closer." Dante retreated through the chamber entrance. 3 wolves followed him. Silas seized a 4th and drove it through the opening. The remaining rogues rushed after their pack. "Now!" Chloe shouted. Silas leaped backward. Chloe slammed her palm onto the yellow control. Industrial doors crashed shut on both ends of the chamber. 8 assassins were trapped inside. They hurled themselves against the metal. The entire room shook. 1 wolf climbed the interior wall, claws screeching across steel. Silas stood beside Chloe, chest heaving, blood running down his arm. She turned a key. The compactor machinery awakened. A massive hydraulic press began advancing. For the first time, the rogues inside stopped attacking. They shifted back into human form, pounding on the reinforced glass and shouting threats. Chloe picked up the control microphone. "This is the property manager." The assassins stared at her. "You entered through a restricted loading zone, damaged building equipment, assaulted staff, and bypassed multiple secured doors." Silas looked at her in disbelief. Chloe continued. "You are currently inside an industrial compactor rated for 6,000 pounds of pressure. 1 rogue bared his fangs. Release us, human." "No." The press moved closer. Panic spread across their faces. Silas's wolf reveled in the fear, but Silas barely looked at them. He was watching Chloe. She stood beneath the emergency lights with damp hair, a wrench-shaped tear in one sleeve, and blood splashed across her cheek that was not hers. Her hands operated the controls without trembling. Her mind had turned concrete, doors, sensors, and maintenance routes into weapons. She had outmaneuvered a pack of trained killers without claws, fangs, or supernatural strength. Adoration struck him so violently that it felt like another bond snapping into place. "Chloe," he said, "not now." The press advanced another foot. The rogues began shouting surrender. She stopped the machine. The chamber fell silent. Dante blinked. "You are not crushing them?" "That would contaminate the recycling system." Silas laughed. It was a deep, astonished sound that filled the sub-basement. Everyone turned toward him. He looked at Chloe as though she had personally rearranged the stars. "You trapped 8 rogue assassins in a trash compactor because killing them would inconvenience waste collection." "Yes." His eyes burned brighter. "My mate," Chloe pointed at his bleeding shoulder. "You need stitches. You called this your building." "It is my building." Silas stepped close, ignoring the men trapped behind the glass and the blood soaking his shirt. His hand rose to her face. Chloe caught his wrist before he could touch her. "Your hands are covered in blood." His gaze dropped to her fingers around him. Even now, she was enforcing standards. His voice softened. "You saved my men. I saved my residents. You saved me. You were doing reasonably well." He leaned closer. Thunder shook the foundation. Emergency lights flickered across his brutal face. "I have conquered entire territories with less efficiency. You also destroyed a penthouse door. I will replace it. With a building-approved model. With whatever model you choose." Chloe released his wrist. Silas did not move away. Behind the glass, one of the assassins struck the door again. Chloe pressed another control. A second steel barrier dropped over the chamber window, sealing them from view. Silas looked at the panel. "What does that do?" "Soundproofing." The pounding vanished. Silence enclosed them. Silas smiled slowly. Chloe immediately raised one finger. "This is not privacy." "No, this is containment." His gaze moved over her face. "For them or for me?" Before Chloe could answer, her radio crackled. The concierge's frightened voice came through. "Miss Mercer, the lobby is secure. Police and emergency crews are outside, but the doors are still locked." Chloe stepped away from Silas and lifted the radio. "I am restoring building access now." She reached for the main control panel. Silas watched her hands move across the switches. One by one, green lights returned. Security doors opened. Emergency systems reactivated. The ventilation fans began to turn. Far above them, Crescent Heights slowly came back to life. Then the main power surged on. Bright fluorescent light flooded the sub-basement. Chloe squinted. Silas stood beside her, covered in blood and debris, his shirt torn open, his immense body radiating violence. Yet the expression on his face held no bloodlust, only awe. Chloe closed the blueprint folder. "Once the authorities remove the intruders, I will need a complete list of damages caused by your conflict." Silas stared at her. "You are finding me?" "Your enemies entered because of you." He stepped closer. "You trapped them. That does not waive liability." His smile became helpless and dangerous. "Dinner? No. Tomorrow? No. I nearly died. You have a scratched shoulder. It is emotionally serious." Chloe turned toward the stairs. Silas followed her without hesitation. Behind them, the trapped assassins remained sealed inside the compactor. Ahead, alarms, voices, and emergency crews filled the building. But Silas heard only Chloe's footsteps. For the first time in his life, he had entered a battle expecting to protect everyone around him. Instead, a human property manager had taken command of his war, weaponized the architecture, and saved his life. His wolf no longer simply wanted her. It worshipped her. Chloe reached the stairwell door and looked back. "Are you coming?" Silas's gold eyes gleamed. "Always." She frowned at the answer, then pushed into the stairwell. Silas followed, smiling like the most dangerous man in Lumina City, had just discovered something far more powerful than fear. Silas followed Chloe up the emergency stairwell while the building returned to life around them. Sirens wailed beyond the lobby. Red lights flashed through the narrow stairwell windows. Radios crackled on every floor as emergency crews secured the entrances, evacuated injured residents, and prepared to remove the surviving assassins from the sub-basement compactor. Silas heard all of it. He also heard Chloe's steady breathing 3 steps ahead of him. His shirt hung in torn strips from one shoulder. Blood covered his hands, chest, and jaw. The shift he had interrupted during the attack had not fully reversed. Dark fur remained along his forearms. His fingers ended in curved black claws. His fangs were still extended, and his glowing golden eyes reflected against the painted concrete walls. He looked less like a man than a creature that had learned to wear one. For the first time in years, Silas felt nervous. Not because armed officers waited above them. Not because rival wolves had discovered his residence. Not because the attack would force him to identify every traitor who had leaked his location. He was nervous because Chloe had not yet looked at him beneath proper lighting. In the darkness of the mechanical corridors, survival had demanded her full attention. She had moved through blood, gunfire, and snarling wolves with a blueprint in one hand and an emergency radio in the other. She had commanded him without hesitation because the building needed her. Now the immediate danger was over. Now she would see what he was. Silas had watched that moment happen with other humans. They saw the claws first, then the eyes, then the fangs. Their faces changed. Admiration became horror. Loyalty became instinctive retreat. Even men who had known him for years sometimes took one unconscious step back when the beast surfaced. Chloe reached the 22nd floor landing and pushed through the door. Silas stopped behind her. The corridor lights had returned, bright and unforgiving. She turned. Her gaze moved over him slowly. Silas held still. Blood streaked his face. His jaw remained partly transformed, broader and sharper than human bone should allow. One sleeve had torn completely away, exposing the black fur climbing toward his shoulder. His claws flexed once at his sides. Chloe's eyes narrowed. Silas waited for fear. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a packet of antiseptic wipes. "You are dripping on the carpet!" He stared at her. She tore open the packet and handed it to him. "Wipe your hands before we reach the penthouse." Silas looked down at the small white cloth resting across his enormous clawed palm. "That is all you have to say?" "You are also bleeding on the stairwell door, but the paint is washable." He lifted his gaze. "Chloe, what? You can see me." "Yes, fully." Her eyes traveled over the half-shifted contours of his face again. "You are approximately 30% hairier than you were an hour ago." A sound escaped him. It was not quite a laugh. It was closer to disbelief breaking apart inside his chest. Chloe resumed walking. "You should finish changing back before emergency personnel reach the top floor. The incident report is already going to be difficult enough without explaining why the leaseholder resembles an oversized wolf." Silas followed her. "You are not afraid." "I am concerned about the structural damage. That was not my question. It was not a useful question." They reached the penthouse corridor. The steel fire door Silas's enemies had torn from its track lay twisted against one wall. Bullet holes marked the plaster. The decorative molding had been ripped away. Blood, glass, and fragments of marble covered the floor. Chloe stopped. Her face became completely still. Silas knew that expression. He had seen it when she discovered his car across 2 parking spaces. He had seen it after the broken cameras. He had seen it beside the deliberately loosened plumbing valve. This was worse. Much worse. Chloe stepped over the shattered remains of a sculpture and entered the penthouse. The attack had destroyed nearly everything. The front door was gone. The entry wall had partially collapsed. A marble column bore deep claw marks and a horizontal fracture where Silas had driven a rogue into it. The dining table was split down the center. Furniture had been overturned, paintings slashed, and sections of hardwood flooring gouged open by claws. Rain blew through a broken window at the far end of the room. Dante stood near the ruined bar with one arm in a sling. Two of Silas's enforcers were carrying injured men toward the service elevator. Police officers and emergency technicians moved carefully through the wreckage. Everyone stopped when Chloe entered. She surveyed the room. Then she removed her tablet. Silas's stomach tightened. Chloe opened the building assessment application and began taking photographs. She documented the missing door, the damaged wall, the fractured column, the shattered stone flooring, the broken window, the flooded wet bar. She moved with ruthless efficiency, entering measurements and repair categories while Silas stood amid the destruction in his partial wolf form, watching her calculate his financial death 1 square foot at a time. Dante approached quietly. Alpha, the surviving rogues are restrained. Authorities are transporting them to Vale custody. Silas did not look away from Chloe. Good. The city officers have questions. They can wait. Dante followed his gaze. Chloe crouched beside the fractured marble column and ran 2 fingers along the crack. Her expression darkened. Dante winced. I would rather face the rogues again, he muttered. Chloe stood. Who struck this wall? Every man in the penthouse looked at Silas. Silas looked at Dante. Dante immediately looked at the ceiling. Chloe turned toward Silas. He lifted one blood-covered hand. There was an attacker. That is a load-bearing support. The attacker was large. The wall is larger. He had claws. So do you. Silas glanced at his hands. His claws slowly retracted. Chloe entered another figure into the tablet. The total at the bottom of the screen increased. Silas stepped closer. How bad is it? She continued typing. Preliminary estimate? Yes. The penthouse door and reinforced frame must be replaced. The corridor fire barrier needs a complete mechanical assembly. The eastern window requires custom storm glass. Approximately 180 square feet of marble flooring must be removed because blood entered the porous surface. One of Silas's men looked offended. That blood is mostly theirs. Chloe turned her head. Would you like it returned? The man became silent. She continued. The support column requires inspection by a structural engineer. The wet bar floor has water damage. 3 cameras, 2 sensors, 1 emergency panel, and 1 stairwell lock were destroyed. Silas folded his arms. Add it to my account. I already have. How much? Chloe tapped the screen. The total appeared. Dante looked over her shoulder and made a low sound. Silas read the number. Then he read it again. He owned private aircraft, armored vehicles, shipping facilities, underground clubs, and financial institutions. The amount itself meant nothing to him. The severity in Chloe's expression meant everything. She turned the tablet toward him. Your security deposit is gone. The penthouse became silent. Silas stared at her. My security deposit. Completely. I paid 6 months in advance. That is rent. Your deposit covered damage. How much damage did you expect me to cause? Less than a siege. Dante coughed into his fist. Silas's golden eyes began to brighten. Chloe held the tablet against her chest. This is not funny. Silas threw his head back and laughed. The sound rolled through the ruined penthouse, deep and powerful, rising above the storm and the sirens below. Everyone stopped to listen. Silas Vale had laughed before, but never like this. There was no cruelty in it, no mockery, no warning. It was the astonished laughter of a man who had spent his entire life surrounded by fear and had finally met the one person capable of standing in the wreckage of an assassination attempt and grieving for the flooring. His partially shifted features softened as the last traces of the wolf retreated. The fur vanished from his arms. His jaw returned to human shape. His eyes remained gold, but the violence inside them dissolved into something warmer. Chloe watched him with suspicion. Are you finished? No. He laughed again. She tapped the tablet. The estimate may increase after the engineering inspection. Silas lowered his head. His smile remained. You have just watched me tear wolves apart. Yes. You discovered that supernatural syndicates are operating throughout Lumina City. Yes. You trapped 8 assassins inside a machine designed to crush industrial waste. They ignored posted restrictions. And your greatest concern is my security deposit. My greatest concern is that you damaged a load-bearing wall in an occupied residential building. Silas looked around. The place he had chosen as a temporary stronghold no longer resembled a home. It was a field of rubble, blood, broken stone, and shattered glass. His entire life had looked like this in one form or another. Every headquarters became a fortress. Every room became a battlefield. Every relationship became an alliance, a threat, or a debt. Then Chloe had arrived with yellow violation forms and treated the terrifying Alpha King like a resident who needed to move his car. She had not ignored his violence. She had simply refused to worship it. She had not denied his power. She had placed it beneath the authority of ordinary rules. For the first time in his life, Silas understood why he had kept breaking them. He had wanted her to return. He had wanted to hear her voice in his rooms. He had wanted to be corrected by someone who expected better from him. Someone who believed that even a monster should tighten his own plumbing valve, park inside painted lines, and pay for what he broke. Silas turned to Dante. The file. Dante's expression shifted. Now? Now. Dante lowered his injured arm and crossed the room. He opened a steel briefcase that had survived beneath the overturned conference table. From it, he removed a thick black file sealed with silver wax. Every veil enforcer in the room became still. Chloe noticed. What is that? Silas took the file. The first honest offer I have ever made. He walked toward the broken dining table. With one sweep of his arm, he cleared away glass and fragments of wood. He placed the file on the only section that remained level. Then the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee. The movement shocked the room more completely than the attack had. Dante's lips parted. The police officers near the entrance stared. Silas's men looked as though the laws of nature had failed. Their alpha did not kneel. Kings did not kneel. Predators did not surrender their throats. Silas rested one knee amid the rubble and looked up at Chloe. Blood marked his skin. His torn shirt exposed the powerful lines of his chest. His dark hair had fallen across his forehead, and exhaustion sharpened the breathtaking severity of his face. Yet there was no arrogance in his expression. Only vulnerability. Only certainty. Only love stripped of every weapon it had once mistaken for strength. Chloe remained motionless. Silas broke the silver seal and opened the file. Inside lay a property deed, transfer documents, financial authorizations, and a black metal seal engraved with the crest of the Veil Syndicate. He slid the file across the ruined table. What is this? Chloe asked. The deed to Crescent Heights. She looked down, then at him. You bought the building? 3 days ago. Her eyes widened for the first time since the attack. Silas continued before she could speak. The previous ownership group accepted my offer this morning. The transfer becomes final when you sign the management acknowledgement. Chloe stared at the deed. You purchased an entire luxury apartment tower. I needed a reason to remain under your jurisdiction. That is the most irresponsible sentence you have ever spoken. I have spoken far worse. She looked at the financial seal. And that? The authority to access every legitimate account controlled by my syndicate. Legitimate? I am trying to be honest. That qualification is not reassuring. Silas's mouth curved. He lifted the seal and placed it on top of the deed. The building is yours. Chloe's face hardened. I do not want you to buy me. I know. Then why are you offering this? Because wealth is the only language I was taught for permanence. He placed one hand over his heart. But it is not the offer. Chloe's breathing slowed. Silas looked directly into her eyes. I am. The storm rumbled beyond the broken windows. No one in the penthouse moved. Silas spoke quietly. I could command armies before I was old enough to understand why men feared me. I learned to take territory, destroy enemies, and force loyalty. I believed power meant never yielding. His voice roughened. Then you walked out of an elevator with a yellow piece of paper and told me quiet hours started at 10. Chloe's lips trembled. Barely. Silas saw it. His eyes burned brighter. You looked at everything the world feared and saw a tenant who needed to behave. You made me feel human when I had forgotten how. He slid the file closer. I do not offer you my empire because I expect you to accept it. I offer it because there can be no hidden leverage between us. No building I control without your knowledge. No wealth I can use to trap you. No authority I will place above your choice. His shoulders squared. I will not command you. Chloe's eyes shone. I will not threaten you. A faint smile touched her mouth. And I will attempt to park correctly. Attempt? I am surrendering. I am not claiming immediate perfection. A broken laugh escaped her. Silas's expression softened. Take the deed. Burn it. Rewrite it. Give the building to the residents. Fine me for owning it without notification. I do not care. You care about nothing that can be invoiced. I care about you. The words landed without armor. Silas lowered his head briefly, then looked up again. I offer my empire, my name, my protection, and every future I possess as a permanent deposit. Chloe walked toward him. Silas stopped breathing. She stood on the other side of the broken table, looking down at the most dangerous man in Lumina City, kneeling amid the ruin he had spent his life creating. What are the terms? She asked. Lifetime lease. Renewal options? Automatic. Early termination? Only at your discretion. Noise policy? His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Negotiable. She gave him a warning look. Strictly enforced, he corrected. Property damage? I pay immediately. Deliberate violations designed to attract management attention? Replaced by direct invitations, which management may decline. Reluctantly accepted. Chloe came around the table. Silas remained kneeling. She stopped directly in front of him. His hands rested open on his thighs. He did not reach for her. He did not use his aura. He did not call upon the bond burning between them. He waited. For once, the Alpha King allowed another person to decide his fate. Chloe placed her tablet on the ruined table. Then she touched his face. Silas closed his eyes. Her palm rested against his blood-streaked cheek with a gentleness so unfamiliar that it nearly broke him. You are a terrible tenant, she whispered. I know. You are arrogant, reckless, manipulative, and financially irresponsible. I purchased an appreciating asset. You bought a skyscraper to flirt with the property manager. When you say it like that, it sounds romantic. It sounds clinically concerning. His eyes opened. Is that a rejection? Chloe studied him. The lethal Mafia king. The impossible resident. The lonely man who had broken rules because he did not know how to ask her to stay. No, she said. It is a final warning. Silas surged to his feet. The table shifted as his body struck hers. One arm wrapped around her waist. His other hand slid into her hair. Chloe caught the torn front of his shirt and pulled him down. Their mouths met. The kiss exploded through the ruined penthouse. It was not cautious. It was weeks of tension finally set loose. Every sharp exchange, every violation, every look, held half a second too long, ignited at once. Silas kissed her with the hunger of a beast that had finally been granted permission to claim nothing and cherish everything. Chloe met him with equal force. She rose onto her toes, gripping his shirt as his powerful arm drew her against the hard wall of his body. His mouth moved over hers, deep and consuming, yet he held back the full force of his strength. Even in surrender, even half wild from blood and battle, he waited for every response. Chloe gave it. Her fingers slid into his hair. Silas growled against her lips. The sound vibrated through her, dark and possessive. But when she pulled back for air, he released her immediately. Their foreheads touched. His chest rose beneath her hands. Was that within regulations? He asked roughly. No. Fine me. Chloe kissed him again. Around them, the veil enforcers began quietly turning away. Dante cleared his throat and guided the officers toward the corridor. Structural safety issue, he said. Everyone out. The penthouse emptied. Silas lifted Chloe onto the unbroken edge of the table and stood between her knees. His hands settled at her waist. She looked toward the open file. You understand that transferring a property requires independent legal review. I expected nothing less, and I am not accepting your syndicate. You may audit it. I will. A trace of alarm crossed his face. Chloe smiled. Silas looked at her as though sunrise had entered the room. Months later, Crescent Heights had new reinforced security doors, updated backup generators, and a structural monitoring system Chloe personally selected. Silas paid for all of it. He also paid every fine. The penthouse was rebuilt with approved materials. The hallway cameras remained intact. His cars stayed precisely between painted lines. Plumbing emergencies decreased to 0. He still violated the noise policy occasionally. Some violations were roars. Others occurred late at night and resulted in Chloe issuing citations the following morning with suspiciously pink cheeks. The deed to Crescent Heights remained in a shared trust controlled equally by both of them. Chloe continued managing the building because she refused to become ceremonial ownership. Silas continued ruling his syndicate, though his methods changed under the influence of a woman who believed rules should apply even to kings. His men learned to submit maintenance requests. Dante learned not to carry ladders near cameras. The concierge received additional combat training and a raise. As for Silas, he discovered that obedience freely chosen was not weakness. It was devotion. True power was never about ruling through fear, violence, or the certainty that no one dared oppose you. True power was finding the one person whose courage made surrender feel like victory. It was laying down your weapons at the door, tightening the valve yourself, following the rules because her peace mattered more than your pride, and finally understanding that home was not the empire you controlled. Home was the person who looked at your worst form, calculated the damage, and stayed. If you enjoyed this witty, steamy, and thrilling modern shifter romance audiobook, please hit the like button and subscribe for more epic stories.